Hey Amanda, how are you doing today?
Good, good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to launch our podcast.
Yeah, so and I also understand this is Women's International Month. So, big shout out to all the women out there that are changing the world and breaking the proverbial glass ceilings. Talk about today. We're here to discuss resiliency and developments that have been able to figure out a better way of doing things. Specifically, we're going to talk about Babcock Ranch in Florida. Does that sound good?
Let's do it.
Start talking about Babcock Ranch and resiliency. I just kind of want to know a little bit more about you, Amanda, and if you can just share kind of some of your background and how you come into this whole thing.
Yeah, thank you. So, Adam and I met in Miami, and before I was in Miami, I was at Babcock Ranch for a little under 4 years on the master development team. And before that, I was a landscape architect and worked around Florida. So I've moved from the design back into the development realm, and it's been a really great journey being able to piece together all of the steps along the way. And we are looking at doing, more resiliency focused development. So yeah, like looking forward to taking all those lessons and rolling it up into one. Babcock Ranch, for those of you that haven't heard of it, it's a new town just outside of Fort Myers. It's got a big portion in Charlotte County and a smaller portion in Lee County. So right on the county lines, it was a development of regional impact. Back when they had those, I don't think that's super common anymore. I think it's shifted. But yeah, a town of 50,000 build out. It'll have 19,500 homes of different mixes and several million square feet of commercial. So it's huge. The planners long before me, because this project has been going on for ever and ever, over a decade. And they took the areas that were used for the agriculture and repurposed those into the development pods. So you don't have to cut down as many, new trees. So yeah, it totally started from scratch, and it will have, the proverbial town hall, all of the community services that you need. They already have a grocery store. Um, they leverage the fire services and some other municipal services. They have their own town water and wastewater treatment. So all the municipal things that you have in your area, they've got there.
When did you come along in this process, Amanda, and how did you get involved?
So my first day, I very much remember that. I met my good friend Dominique White there, and the gates were still closed. They hadn't even done the fit out for the sales center. So the first home wasn't quite ready. We didn't have any residents. And since then, that's 7 years ago, and they're up to, I think, maybe around 2,000 residents. So it's definitely it's blown up, and it's been so cool to see the starting of a new town. I mean, how many people, have had the opportunity to do something like that? Somehow we've gotten all the way into the Zoom without talking about how it's a solar powered town.
Oh,
So yeah,
small fact. So it's a solar powered town. Okay. Like what does that mean?
they have 800 acres plus or minus of solar panels. It's really enough to offset the power demand from the
I
town.
mean, if anyone has not seen kind of what a solar field looks like, I would highly recommend to go to Babcock. They have this amazing kind of ramp area where you can walk up it and then look down across the entire solar field. And it's impressive. I mean, it's like thousands of thousands of thousands of solar panels that make up this Babcock Ranch. Is there anything else at Babcock that you would say is noteworthy, or that if we were going to talk to new developers that they should kind of check out?
Lifestyle. Honestly, I know that's probably not what most people think about when they think about real estate. And those in real estate, when they think about lifestyle, typically it's like we have a pool and these there's these are the events and so on and so forth. But the community that Babcock has built is so amazing. It's really a lot of like-minded people that come together that really have an appreciation for what they're trying to do. And so I think developers really need to think that through, right? It's how do they get tenants in their commercial areas that are going to support the lifestyle that, this community wants to live in, right? So that's things like, okay, maybe we don't put a party city in there because it's got a lot of single-use plastics, or whatever degree that may be. But you have to think through on how your residents and your customer base really wants to live and how they want to contribute to the change. And so the whole farm to table was a big part of that, and I would recommend that we think about that as developers. How do you keep the supply as close to the demand as you can and involve people, and especially that plant, that vegetation, and just know where your food is coming from.
I mean, obviously, a huge topic today. People want to know about their food. They feel good if there's a low carbon footprint on it. I was impressed when I saw at Babcock that the sod fields, and saying, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, Babcock has land. Why not make it productive for everybody?
Babcock is different in their design guidelines, that they have a maximum percentage of sod that you're able to put in your property. So on your residential property, they also, right, because we want to reduce the amount of pesticides and fertilizers and so on and so forth. And with that comes a certain percentage of native landscaping. I think you're taken down hopefully less than in other developments, but you're still having to reshape the land and the environmental communities. So you want to put back something that's similar, if not what was there before, and keep everything. I believe it's 70% native in the residential areas and 90% in the commercial areas or the public areas.
All these lakes, and you see kind of the water has been manicured, so to speak.
Of why the land plan looks like it does. You can see Curry Creek going down the spine of the project. And so much of the water was redesigned to go back to its original hydrology. And that was a big part of why they did well in the hurricanes.
Most people have read in the news, and it was covered by national and international news. There was a huge hurricane that hit Florida last year, right? 2022, at the end of the year. And it came through the west side of Florida and really did a lot of damage to that area. We took a tour, Amanda and I, we both took that tour to Sanibel Island, and we saw just a massive amount of destruction of homes and beach sides and trees and everything. So it really was a bad hurricane. However, the news, as it was reported, Babcock seemed to have kind of weathered the storm.
Babcock Residential has Florida Greenbuild certification requirements. So they all have to be built to, those standards. And like I said, they have about 2,000 residents plus or minus now. And I believe that the whole state has about 32,000 certifications. So people are really adapting to that. And I mean, just the new building standards are definitely going to help us, but it's not going to save us either. We all have to stay on top of things and just be prepared, like adapting these new technologies and finding better ways to build.
But really incredible, the incredible story is what we hear coming out of the national news, that Babcock kind of survived the hurricane, and in fact even thrived, where when we were there, they were saying that they didn't even lose power. I mean, how does a community build itself to be strong like that?
We still have the old school overhead power lines, and in Babcock, it's all underground. So that's a new standard there. If you don't have all these trees popping over to everything, then that definitely helps your infrastructure and going, having less linemen having to go repair things.
So having underground utilities, smart checklist. And then also in Babcock, from the flooding perspective, I mean, we're all kind of at the same level, but Babcock did not get flooded. And so when you drive through it, you see these lakes, you see the lagoons. Was there something that they did in their planning to try to, mitigate or reduce the effects of flooding?
There were a lot of initiatives. I mean, just from the very beginning, I mean, those before me, they looked at the patterns of the water. I mean, what's actually there, listening to the land and trying to replicate that and work within the context that they have. There are wetland recreation and enhancement zones. So just protecting the natural habitat that is supposed to do that anyways. I mean, our natural habitats are there for a reason. They manage all of this for us. So we have to be careful not to impact that.
Okay, so not rocket science, just look at what nature has provided for us. And if we're going to tread on it, tread lightly and maybe even try to make it better.
Mhm.
It's an amazing story. To be able to have a vision, be able to execute on the vision, and then have that vision tested, and it come out with flying colors. Big shout out, Amanda, to the whole team, to you, to everybody who kind of thinks that resiliency is important and are willing to commit the time and the resources to get it done.
There's a lot of public funding. So, for example, yesterday we talked about the police funding certain real estate projects. So it's not all private money that is behind this, and you have to be careful. My point is that you have to be very careful with your business decisions, and you have to appeal to the masses to be able to get your project sold and built in the right amount of time. So that should be the only focus, though. I mean, you can make these big changes in sustainability, but you have to do them incrementally, and you kind of have to test, and you have to see how the buyers react. So it was interesting for me to apply this big business to these concepts that are more grassroots. And one of the people that we met, Adam, was Bill Moore. And I loved his saying that you don't have to build on the granola highway, but you have to do the things that are good for you, the things that you can have the small control over.
Okay, so if people do want to get involved in Babcock and are interested in learning more, then I imagine they can contact you, and then you can kind of fill them in on what's happening at Babcock. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah.
So from my point, I am just thoroughly excited to see success and companies take risks and then have those risks pay off, especially when it comes to protecting their communities and being good stewards of the environment. So big shout out to Babcock and everybody on the team. And I've really enjoyed speaking with you, Amanda. And thank you very much for this first of hopefully of many, many conversations.
Likewise, and I can't wait to see where this goes, implementing our own sustainability into our own projects.